After losing the pawns, the Doctor is a changed man. He now acts like classic Time Lords did and has washed his hands of getting involved in the affairs of planet Earth. He just sulks up in the sky with his reformatted TARDIS, a far more austere, but in my humble opinion better looking design than the previous chaotic one. But there is no rest for the last Time Lord, as we'll soon find out. We begin at an orphanage, way back in the Elizabethan or possibly Edwardian era. Definitely Elizabethan. And an orphan named Simeon, who is divorced from the other kids. He just quietly makes snowmen during the winter. Deems the other kids silly. But then the snowman he makes talks back, using some of Simeon's words. And that changes everything, because half a century later, the now elder Simeon, played by former Ninth Doctor in a history that could have been Richard E. Grant. Simeon is now a powerful businessman. But his hobbies are strange. Collecting snow. But not just any snow, very special snow that apparently remembers being snowmen. Unfortunately, these snowmen have teeth. In fact, not only do they have teeth, but they're hungry. And poor Simeon, he's become a cold man. Once a whole bunch of locals finish collecting the snow for him, he feeds them to the very snow they collected, using wordplay against them. Next, we come across a barmaid named Clara Oswin Oswald, who looks exactly like Souffle Girl. And yet, she's here, perhaps a distant ancestor. But this is Clara's last day tending bars, because she's got a new job as a governess for some rich guy whose last name is Latimer, quite possibly the ancestor of the boy from the two-parter back in 1913 during the 10th Doctor's run. At least that's what I like to think. And the funny thing is, she changes everything about herself. The way she dresses, her hair, even her accent. As Clara the barmaid, she spoke like Liza Doolittle. Well, maybe not that far, but pretty close. But when she's the governess, she speaks with a far more posh accent. Except in secret to the kids. But only if they've been good. Also, she has the eye of Mr. Latimer, although he would never admit it. Though he does pine for her. Unfortunately, before Clara leaves to become the governess, she encounters a snowman that wasn't there 2 seconds ago. And chance of chances, she asks a passerby, who kind of reminds me of Scrooge in his overall demeanor, if he was responsible. And it's the Doctor, and he wasn't. And while he tries to ignore her and gets a ride home from none other than Strax, meaning the trio of Strax, Vastra, and Jenny, aka the Paternoster Gang, are here too. But Clara is persistent. She even forces her way onto the carriage and asks, "Doctor who?" Meanwhile, Simeon has run afoul of Vastra and Jenny. And while he's nonplussed at the fact that she's a Silurian, he is rather taken aback that she's the inspiration for Sherlock Holmes. Seriously. But he's legally done nothing wrong, as far as anyone can tell, so Vastra has no choice but to leave him alone. But something is tickling the back of her neck, so she knows something's wrong. Eventually, Clara is able to figure out where the doctor is when she follows him. And Strax has trouble erasing her memory using a special worm. And also Clara convinces the doctor that if she's lost her knowledge of the snowman, she's vulnerable to attack. Eventually, she comes across the TARDIS. Up a ladder, up some stairs, and up in a hardened cloud. She doesn't go inside, but she does see that it's a police box. And she's convinced to go back when the daughter of Mr. Latimer starts having dreams about the previous governess. A horrible wench who, last autumn, fell into a little fishy pond on the Latimer property, which then froze solid, entombing her body for over a month. It seems this girl thinks that the horrible ice woman is going to come back and get her. And the funny thing is, the pond is once again frozen, even though it's a relatively tepid winter. So, knowing this kind of weirdness is potentially up the doctor's alley, she goes back to the spot where he called down the ladder and tries to call for him, attracting just a wee bit too much attention. Luckily, Jenny's there and brings Clara to Madame Vastra, who offers her a test. Convince the doctor in one word why he should help her. And the word is pond. Now, we all know she means the little pond on the Latimer property, but the doctor takes it another way, and so decides to help, and finds that the snow is potentially alien. Yeah, alien snow. Eventually, Simeon puts his plans into action, and the ice woman emerges, mirroring what the people around her have said, from backhanded compliments to threats. And she looks darn dangerous, even though she's a poorly animated CGI ice creature. Also, Simeon sends the snowmen after them. But after a bit of stalling and a confrontation where the doctor poorly impersonates Sherlock Holmes, which puts his fourth incarnation to shame, or causes shame from his fourth incarnation. We find out that the snow that Simeon is collecting is the intelligence. Yes, the great intelligence from Tibet, the London Underground, London in the 90s. It's back. Thrice it's been defeated by the Doctor and his companions, and it seems the intelligence is geared up for round 4. Funny thing is, the Doctor doesn't recognize it, as if he's forgotten the previous adventures, previous fights against it. Although canonically, this could be the first time he's encountered it. He tries to reason with Simeon, but to no avail. He's a slave to the intelligence through and through. So, the Latimer house comes under siege. And what's worse, if the snowmen get a hold of the Ice Woman, they can help the intelligence manifest itself. And that's all she wrote for Earth. Luckily, he and Clara managed to lure the Ice Woman away, up into the cloud with the TARDIS. And because she's shown good character and a curiosity that was insatiable, the Doctor offers her a place as a companion, complete with a key to the TARDIS. Unfortunately, the happy moment comes to a flaming end when the Ice Woman, who was able to break through the cloud barrier that the Doctor put up, and drags poor Clara off the cloud. And while the Ice Woman shatters, Clara lies broken and dying. Strax is able to keep her alive for a while, but unfortunately, her injuries prove fatal. So, the Doctor packs up what little he can find of the Ice Woman, since he was able to materialize the TARDIS around both her and Clara. And puts the pieces of the Ice Woman in a box, which, incidentally, has a map of the London Underground on it. Yeah, apparently he decided to rattle off the fact that the London Underground is a bit of a weak spot in London's defenses. So quite possibly this is the impetus for going to the London Underground in the Web of Fear serial, indicating that this might be the canonical first encounter with the intelligence on Earth. And Tibet was kind of a side quest. So, when the Doctor gives Simeon one last chance to throw off the shackles, Simeon just takes the box. But it's a trick. Turns out the memory worm that Strax failed to use on Clara was in the box. And once it Like Simeon, he loses all memory of the intelligence. But the intelligence had a backup plan. With Simeon's mind emptied out, it pours in, turning Simeon cold once and for all. But even though it looks like the intelligence is won, something happens. It starts to rain. Now earlier it was discovered that a psychic bond with some of the victims of the intelligence was formed, and if the people can avoid thinking about the snowmen, then they wouldn't manifest, or they would melt if you picture them melting. But then, when it seemed the intelligence was going to win, apparently someone pictured tears, powerful tears, tears of mourning, and that caused a rain of salt water, which destroyed the snowmen and broke the intelligence's hold over this time and place. Simeon died, of course. The snowmen melted, and we find out that the family is crying over a dying Clara. And despite the doctor and Strax's best efforts, Clara dies, with her last words curiously being that the doctor is a clever boy and telling him to run and remember. Oddly, what Oswin said in her last moments. And so Clara is buried on Christmas Day. And though the day has been saved, the victory is bittersweet. But then the doctor realizes something. Clara has died twice. Once as Oswin and once as Clara. Although he doesn't put it together that she could be a descendant of Clara, Oswin that is. So, he decides to go looking and see if there are more Claras. And amazingly, there is. Because in the future, a woman named Clara cuts a shortcut through the cemetery where her previous self is buried. The doctor eventually finds this Clara, who is working as a nanny as a favor to a friend after the matriarch of the family is passed on. And while she is clever, she's not very computer savvy. And that's not good, because this episode opens with someone delivering a message that the Wi-Fi has something in it. And if you're not careful, if you click on the wrong Wi-Fi account, it takes you. And people have been dropping dead all over London with their consciousnesses uploaded onto screens, and then repeating that they don't know where they are and calling for help. Eventually, after spending time as a monk in the Middle Ages, the bells of St. John ring, according to what the other monks say. Turns out the bells in question is the telephone in the police call box, which wasn't there before. And St. John is a reference to the badge on the front of the TARDIS door, which perfectly mimics an old police box, which I think came from St. John Street. Turns out it's Clara. She called because the number in question, given to her by a lady in a shop, was a helpline. And so the Doctor goes there, to modern London, to finally meet this impossible girl. He was a little wary at first because he's still dressed as a monk, but he quickly changes into a new outfit similar to his old one, but not quite. Unfortunately, she already clicked on the alien Wi-Fi signal, because when trying to access the Wi-Fi in the house where she's currently babysitting, using the mnemonic device "Run, you clever boy, and remember" to remember the Wi-Fi password, which is a series of letters and some numbers. The Doctor's startled realization about what she just said causes her to screw up. And not being tech savvy, she clicks on the wrong Wi-Fi signal. And someone noticed. So they decide to download her, whatever that means, and give her a tech package, whatever that means. And so, a girl that Clara saw on the cover of one of Amelia's books, is one of the boys she's looking after. He's reading one of Amelia's books, Chance of Chances. But somehow Clara meets the girl from the cover of the book at the house. And all I can say is stuff that Clara's already said, similar to the intelligence. Curious. And it turns around to reveal that the back of its head looks like a spoon. It's some kind of mobile Wi-Fi signal transmitter in the form of a robot. And it pulls her body out, or it pulls her mind out of her body, leaving her dead. Luckily, the Doctor manages to counter-hack the guys at the evil place of evil, and Clara gets put back in her body, complete with a tech download. So, good for her. And so the Doctor tries to figure out what's going on, utilizing Clara's borrowed computer. But then, after Clara wakes up and they get attacked again by more spoonheads, the Doctor rapidly introduces her to his world. Seeing that the TARDIS is smaller on the outside, as the previous Clara mentioned, seeing that it can move in time and space, and seeing that there's danger in the Doctor's world because they get attacked by a plane, and people get shut down and used as puppets by this whatever it is. And so Clara offers to track the employees of this company of evil, because she now has technical abilities, and in setting up a fake name for herself, she says Oswald for the win and comes up with Oswin. Another coincidence. And while she's doing that, the doctor confronts this whatever it is in a coffee shop that uses people as mouthpieces. Unfortunately, this whatever it is too intelligent. It utilizes the doctor's face in a spoonhead to trap Clara, and this time it got her. She can't be separated from the Wi-Fi cloud. So the doctor decides to use the information she's obtained for him and storm the base, which, as it turns out, is the Shard. This big ice pick looking thing, not ice pick, railroad spike looking thing in the middle of London. He flies an anti-gravity motorbike up to where the office is, and the head of the company, some shrewish lady who has a pad that can change the abilities of her minions and casually talks about murder, goes to confront the doctor. But it's a trick. While he learns that only a small percentage of the people who've been taken would go back to their bodies, most would die, but they would be free of a living nightmare. And he learned a long time ago that you can't save the whole town, but you can save someone. So he unleashes his trap. Turns out the doctor in question was the Spoonhead, which then downloads the head of the company, and with a little prodding from the doctor's Spoonhead doppelganger, the whole cloud is downloaded, and everyone who can be saved is saved, including Clara. But that's not the end of it. Turns out, UNIT was investigating, and they quickly apprehend everyone in the office, and we find out who's really behind it. The Great Intelligence. It seems it's been using Wi-Fi to keep itself coalesced. So that's a whoops from our technology overlords. Wi-Fi is evil. Who'da thunk it? And so the Intelligence tells his personal minion to sever their connection, which sends a signal to everyone. Turns out they did not know of their job. One guy turns out to be a janitor. Another guy doesn't remember how he got to where he was. And the main minion? Well, she's really just a child. And so the doctor unwittingly wins another victory against the Intelligence. And he decides to invite Clara along with him for some adventures while he investigates this impossible girl. Now, before he takes her anywhere, he does a quick investigation of who she is. Apparently, she blew into the world on a leaf, which nearly sent her dad into oncoming traffic, only to be saved by her mom. And from that meet cute, they spawned a family. And they were happy until the poor woman was killed in 2005. Possibly by Autons, back in the 9th Doctor's debut episode. but that's not confirmed. And so, seeing nothing too odd about her, he decides to take her someplace amazing. So he revisits someplace where he's been with Susan, of all people. An outpost in the Akaton system. A place with 7 systems that believe life spawned in that spot in the universe. And for their species, it could have. Because our sun spawned life in our system. So, there you go. And it seems there's a special festival going on where a young girl is selected to sing a song to keep an old god asleep. And the currency in this outpost is stuff that's near and dear to the hearts of the various species trading and collecting here. And Clara ends up having an encounter of her own after the doctor walks away and gets separated. Clara runs into a little girl who is going to be the one to sing the song. Her title is the Queen of Years. Problem is, she's terrified that she's going to screw up. So after being unable to hide her in the TARDIS because it locks them both out, Clara gives the young queen, named Mary, with 2 R's, a pep talk. And the pep talk helps. And so, everybody gets a ringside seat for the girl's performance, which goes pretty well, until she's tractored to a pyramid in a neighboring spot in that system. See the place where Clara and the doctor are is an asteroid with an atmosphere, and the girl gets taken to a pyramid on top of another asteroid nearby. And because Clara feels responsible for putting her in that position, she and the doctor buy a hover bike with one of Clara's more valuable rings. Well, valuable to her, it was her mom's. And head to the pyramid to rescue the girl, who has no idea what to do now, because turns out there are people in the pyramid. A guy continuing to sing, beautifully I might add, and a fossilized alien, well, mummified would be the more accurate term. And things are going okay. The doctor and Clara manage to get inside, at which point the mummy awakes, starts banging on its glass imprisonment, and when the doctor and Clara try to leave with the girl after the guy who was already there transmits away on his own, coward. Some enforcers show up. Cyborgs, I wager. Meant to ensure that the sacrifice of the girl's soul to the mummy goes off without a hitch. But luckily the doctor can circumvent them and Clara and the girl manage to ride away in the hoverbike, which works similar to a regular bike. So Clara is able to manage it well enough back to the previous asteroid. Meanwhile, the Doctor confronts the entity that was awakened when the mummy finally broke its enclosure and sent a signal to the nearby, I don't know if it's a star or a planetoid or what, but whatever it is, it's intelligent. And it gobbles up stories and trinkets that are meaningful to people. And while it's already eaten, it wants more. So the Doctor tells his story. And while it seems the entity is satiated, it's not quite. So with the girl and the crowd singing the old song to give the Doctor and Clara strength, Clara offers up a story of her own. The leaf that started her whole existence, and the possibilities that were cut short when her mom died. And that is enough to put the old god to sleep for good. Hopefully, the technical destruction of that star, planet, whatever, doesn't spell doom for everyone else, but the day is saved. And Clara even gets back her ring. And so they move on to their next adventure. They head to Vegas in the 80s, only to end up on a Russian sub in the middle of the North Sea. And something is besieging the Russian crew, causing their sub to sink. And the fact that their sub is sinking causes the TARDIS to leave without Clara and the Doctor. So now they're all trapped. With a bit of advice from the Doctor, they're able to stop themselves from sinking. But they're pretty much up the creek without a paddle. And what's worse, the thing that attacked them from the inside, an ice warrior. Yes, they're back. And they are not technically allies yet with humanity, that is. It seems that 5,000 years ago, a guy named Skaldak, a hero to his people, was frozen solid. And just like in The Thing, when he was thawed out, he was cheesed off. So he reacted in self-defense, which caused the sub to crash. And later, when the Doctor tries to talk to him, one of the crew wielding a cattle prod against polar bears zaps him, which officially declares war between the Martians and Earth. Oh boy. Those crazy Russians. Luckily, the Doctor and Clara are able to convince the crew that they're here to help. So, after some posturing and a couple of lost crew members, Skaldak decides to use the weapons aboard the sub to end humanity, start a chain reaction which in 1983 will consume the world. Because this is one of those times when history is in flux, when it can be changed. But despite the doctor's pleas that there is honor in mercy, and Skaldak did spare the guy who actually shocked him and Clara, he's still convinced to kill all the humans, even briefly abandoning his armor, which is a huge taboo for ice warriors. But chance of chances, earlier when Skaldak sent a signal to any and all Martians in the vicinity, some showed up. They ended up pulling the sub out of the water and transmitting him aboard. And since the ice warriors are totally dense, Skaldak decides to show the humans mercy and turns off the nukes. And so the day is saved. The surviving crew rejoice. Clara, I guess, gets asked about bands popular in the 80s by the guy with the cattle prod, who's actually a scientist, and played by David Warner, I believe his name is. But she can't reveal anything. Meanwhile, the doctor finds out that the TARDIS ended up on the other side of the planet, at the South Pole. And so while everybody's celebrating, the doctor asks the captain for a lift. And he's very magnanimous, considering they're Cold War Russians. And finally, the doctor takes Clara to an authentic haunted house in the 70s. Oddly enough, UNIT don't get involved this time, even though in the 70s, his third incarnation is bandying about, working for UNIT. This one he handles on his own, with Clara's help. It seems a real James Bond type who is haunted by the past, so he's become a ghost hunter to try and cope. Has brought along an empathic psychic whom he quietly fancies and who reciprocates the feelings, although they don't publicly say it. Anyway, they investigate a ghost that's been around for centuries, millennia even. And while they do make contact, it's not complete. But with the doctor's help, they find out that this ghost is actually a time traveler. A woman who finds out that time travel is not as easy as it looks, as she ended up in a pocket universe. From her perspective, though, it's only been a few minutes. But when the doctor investigates using the TARDIS, everyone else's perspective is that of millions of years. And Clara comes to a realization. Number one, the TARDIS potentially doesn't like her. Can't imagine why. She can be a bit abrasive sometimes, but it's in a cute way. And number two, the Doctor is far more timeless than Clara realized. And she wonders why he tolerates her presence, because from his perspective, she hasn't been born yet. She's been dead thousands of years. Thousands of millennia, really. and she wonders whether or not they all look like ghosts to him. But he, in his vague way, reassures her. Anyway, with the psychic's help and a blue crystal from Metabilis 3, you gotta wonder how the Doctor got away with that, considering how many spiders there were on Metabilis. He's able to enter the pocket universe and rescue the woman, who, as it turns out, was related to the psychic. And over the course of the adventure, the James Bond guy and the psychic admit their feelings for one another, and they turn out to be the woman's ancestors. Unfortunately, the Doctor's work isn't complete, because besides rescuing the woman and temporarily getting trapped in the pocket universe, the Doctor runs afoul of some sort of creature, a Lovecraftian horror of flesh and bone that, as it turns out, is another time traveler. Someone who followed the woman into the pocket universe the hard way because he loves her. And so, before the episode ends, the Doctor rescues him as well, because everyone wants a companion. And that's the end of our adventures with the Doctor and Clara for now. When next we meet, things get really freaky, and the Doctor finds out a little more about the impossible girl. Until then, this is Mr. J signing out and reminding you, even monsters want someone to be with. And always respect the Ice Warriors, because they are soldiers. Geronimo.